Last week I talked about the idea of being desperate. Desperate for Jesus, desperate for truth, desperate for His leading in our lives, to chase after Him, that He's our place of refuge and answers. I got a little excited, I got a little enthused, and it went way longer than I anticipated the devotional going. So this is going to be a bit shorter. I just wanted to continue that thought a little bit, and thinking specifically about rocks. More or less bedrocks, but here Janelle likes to collect rocks, so she has a bunch of rocks, and I would certainly more prefer that she collects rocks than she does sand, and that may not make any sense to you right now, but it will in a moment. So she has a lot of different types of rocks, some geodes, different things she's collected from the rocks in our yard, pretty ones. But these rocks are for me, I guess, symbols of something more important, more truthful. In Matthew 7, Jesus is teaching us about how somebody who listens to His teaching and does them, obeys them, is like a wise man who builds his house on a rock, not a stone, but bedrock. And so this is the way the passage goes. Anyone who listens to my teaching and follows it is wise, like a person who builds a house on a solid rock. See, the storms come and the winds beat against the house, but the house stands firm. It won't collapse because it's built on bedrock. But anyone who hears my teaching and does not obey is like somebody who builds a house on sand, a fool. Because when the storms come and the floods come and the winds beat against the house, it collapses, it crashes. I don't know, in these desperate times, thinking about desperation, where you go to for truth, but I think Jesus makes it very clear that when life is difficult, when teaching is hard, when the winds come, when the rains pour, that we cling to Jesus, His words, and we live them out in truth. We live them out in our lives. I think a lot of people are chasing after, different religions that might seem a little bit more palatable because they might seem easy. They might seem comfortable, and I can follow this, I can do this. It's easy, but it's fake. It's empty. It's hollow. Maybe even chasing after different philosophies, belief systems, whatever. But it's not truth. It's not life-giving words. I love how Peter responds to Jesus in John 6. Jesus is sharing some really difficult things for people to grasp. In John 6, he's talking about how we eat of His flesh. And, he's talking about eventually what we do in church, communion. We drink His blood. We eat His flesh symbolically to remember His sacrifice. And He is the bread of life. And so we have life, and we come to Him, we have life when we eat of Him, when we drink of His blood and eat of His flesh. But people were saying, holy smokes, what are you talking about? This doesn't make any sense. And so many disciples and many left Him, and they walked away. And He turns to the 12 and He says, are you going to leave too? And I love Peter's response. He says, Lord, to whom would we go? I'm sure they're probably scratching their heads too. They're probably struggling. This is hard to grasp. This is hard to understand. But Peter says it. Where else are we going to go? Who else are we going to go to? You have the words that give eternal life. We believe and we know that you are the Holy One of God. My hope for us as the church, as Christ's body, as Christ's church on earth, even in these difficult times, even with everything that we're dealing with right now, things that might be hard to understand, hard to grasp onto, that as the church, we would continually be grounding ourselves, anchoring ourselves, right? In Jesus' teaching, in His words, and doing His words. That as the church, we would turn nowhere else, looking for easier ways that maybe it's easy now, but they're hollow, they're empty, they're fake. They're fake substitutes. But we would actually cling to Jesus. Like Peter says, you have the words of eternal life. That I think during this challenging time, that we as the church would grow from strength to strength, that we would be His ambassadors, that we would point people to Jesus even now. Because people are looking for answers, they're looking for truth, they're looking something to build their lives on. And it's Jesus' words, and it's living out His words. That is our bedrock. So that's my hope for us, I think, as the church, as we move forward through this, as we walk through this, that we would just be the body, that we would be His church, that we would live it out in truth, that people would be pointed through us, by us, to Jesus, that their lives might be built on His truth, their lives might be built on His word that lead to eternal life. So let's be the church. I love you. We're praying for each other. Let's be the church.